CMajor Before the Show, and this is CMajor. Thank you for joining me this morning. It's great to be with you, and I am very excited to be here. It's a beautiful morning here in the New York City area, and hopefully you have been making music since the last time I saw you. So if you have, reach out to me. My social media has changed since the last time I saw you, but that's okay. You can still reach me, and I can tell you a little bit more how to reach me on social media. Just keep on listening. But thank you. I'm glad you're here. Thank you for joining me today. So this morning I'm going to continue my discussion on prepping your keyboard with color. And I'm also going to give some student shout-outs. I have a lot of students that are doing great things across the summer months. So I'm really proud of them, and I'm looking forward to sharing with you their progress. And then I want to invite you to go over to see me on CMajor's Classroom. Go to cmajorsclassroom.wordpress.com. I think that's the best place to meet me at this point in time, is to meet me over there, because I really want to start interacting a little bit more with my listeners and to really drive home the point of sharing ideas on how you are going to bring your music making out. So discovering within yourself your potential and finding out what excites you to study piano in the first place. So hopefully we can get some more shared ideas going on over there. So my apologies if you are going to miss seeing me on Twitter, but I'll come back again. I'll come back around. So, school is out. School is out. And I just want to say that. I don't know if I'm going to ring the bell today. I think I'll leave the bell alone for today. But school is out. So what that means is that CMajor is continuing her research across the summer. And the big idea for research across the summer is for understanding how people can learn to play the piano simply by following colors. How is that possible? Do you have any ideas on this? Last week, I helped you to prep your keyboard. I helped you to find 7 colors that you could use on your keyboard. So I assigned colors to certain keys on the keyboard. Hopefully you were able to prep it the way that we talked about. But I'm interested to know if you were able to come up with your own color scheme, something that makes a little bit more sense for you, something that you may enjoy seeing more. You may not want to put a black color or assign a black color to middle C, for instance. You may decide to assign another color to that key. Also keep in mind too that you can color code your entire keyboard. Now, I saw a little bit of this on YouTube this week. I saw someone who was demonstrating how to actually spray paint their piano, believe it or not. They opened up the inside part of a piano, took out the key, spray painted it with some sort of plastic coating paint type. Not quite sure how to describe that, but It was a special paint that was designed to spray paint that type of texture. So definitely check with a professional before you try this at home if you decide to try it. But I loved it. It was a lovely color of blue, I believe. And it was alternating blue colors. That was the color scheme of the entire piano. But it also made me think, what would it feel like to spray paint every single key using the color scheme that we discussed in our last show together? That would be interesting. Sounds like a lot of work. But also keeping in mind the Roy G. Biv idea, you could spray paint regions of your keyboard. You could do it that way too. So maybe in a future CMajor Before the Show episode, I will be talking about this, because I think it's possible if you start with the first 7 letters of the music alphabet at the low end of your piano, and then just come on up from there. So every 7 keys, you're spray painting a different color. So that's an interesting color idea. So maybe we'll explore that on a future CMajor Before the Show. So I also want to say this, that CMajor Before the Show will continue. I'm excited about that across the summer. So shout out again to my listeners, my followers, the ones who are following the show. I really appreciate your time and your attention. It's a lot to ask to have you stop what you're doing and listen in. So hopefully you don't have to stop what you're doing, that you can multitask while you're listening to the program. But I'm just glad to have you here. So give yourselves a shout out. Shout out to you. And so while we're on the subject of shout-outs, I just want to go ahead and start giving my shout-outs now to my students. And I'm so proud of my students this summer. They are showing me that they're on fire for music making. They're not dropping out. They're staying with me throughout the summer. I have some new students that are coming in. Very excited about them. And so if you don't mind this morning, I'm really just going to take my time with the shout-outs this morning, because I really think that these students are showing our hope for the future. They really are. And it doesn't matter if they are young, middle age, or old. The fact that they really still want to do this is very encouraging to me, and I know it's inspiring to others. So everybody has their reasons for wanting to play the piano, and sometimes it's a reason of wanting to solve a problem, and other times it's just a reason of wanting to do something that they've always dreamed of doing. So lots of student shout outs this morning, so just bear with me. And so the first student shout out I want to give is one for a student that is doing something so unique. I've never had a student doing something like this. And of course, in the interest of confidentiality, I do want to protect my students by not saying their names and just giving a brief description of what they're doing. But I know that if they're listening, they would know who they are. But I do want to protect their names, so I will not be saying the names of the students, but I will just describe some of the things that are going on with my students. But this particular student was doing something so unique. I had never heard of this before and had not thought about doing this with any other students, and it just never occurred to me that this student is so, how should I say it? It really has to do with his parents. His parents are just so supportive of his music making. That's the best way to describe it. I mean, they will do just about anything to make sure he stays engaged with music making. So whether it is buying new equipment, whether it is just piquing his interest in music by having him listen to their old recordings, to just making sure he stays engaged with his peers that are making music, enrolling him in extra classes. The list just goes on. So I just want to give a partial shout out right now to this student. And his parents. And we're going to give a full shout out in a moment. But the thing that really surprised me was that this student is using social media in his music making. Now, we live in an age where social media is being used a lot of different ways. And so it's just nice to see someone that wants to inspire others with his music making by using social media to do that. And so what we were doing was putting together a song that he was interested in learning to play, but recording it so that he is putting on display frames of the song. It's almost like sequencing, really. But he was using social media to do it. So I won't name the social media that he was using, but I will say that the whole idea was to record everything using frames and then posting that. And so a big shout out to that student. So creative, this student. So I just think it's great, and I just want to encourage him to keep doing what he's doing, and you'll go far. The same student is not afraid to say to me that he wants to play music that inspires him. So that's different than how we were taught growing up, that you had to stick to one particular program or whatever your teacher said. That's what went, basically. But I listened to my students, and I did an episode over at the CMajor radio show about trusting your teacher, but in some cases it really is about trusting your students, because if they say they want to learn something, you really need to listen to them and see what it is that they are talking about, because that is what is exciting their desire to study, and you don't want to lose that. You don't want to lose them, and you don't want to lose that desire for them to study music in the first place, because let's just face it, nobody has to do this. According to science, you should. Making music makes you smarter, but no one really has to invest the time and the money when they could go on and do other things in terms of music making that may be more passive. So that's my point there. But I'm really inspired by my students when they tell me they want to learn something. They're on fire to learn something, especially the ones that are teenagers, preteens. You have to do everything you can to keep them engaged and keep them wanting to stick with the piano when there's so many other things trying to get their attention with mobile devices and apps and everything else that's out there. To have young students that really want to sit down at the piano and learn to play the piano. And they're not just dabbling in it. They really are learning music concepts along with learning the songs that they want to learn. That's basically how I try to help my students. So I have another shout out now. And this is for a student who discovered his finger power. He discovered the power that he has in his fingertips by keeping his fingers curved. And this is a big deal. So a big shout out to him. So I was really excited for him because it wasn't a struggle. I don't want to say it in a negative way like that and be all negative, but it took us about 6 months to get to this point because he always wanted to play on his finger pads versus his finger tips. And so I kept saying, if you could just create a C shape with your hands, imagine you're holding that ball, imagine you're holding that imaginary bubble that you don't want to break, and then place your fingers on the keyboard like that. And he finally found that out for himself, that if he plays that way, he can get more sound from his piano. And it was so cute because he kept looking at me and he said, there's something wrong with my piano. There's something wrong with my piano. And he has the advantage of playing on a real piano. So it's not just a keyboard, but sometimes pianos may not respond to your touch unless you are using a certain technique. So for him, using the technique and artistry that we have been discussing and then learning the power of playing on his fingertips on white keys was a big deal for him, and he found it out himself. And so I just want to give a shout out to his family that's been so patient with his music making, patient with me as a teacher, and just trusting the process, really believing that their child can go far in his music making, and he is. So big shout out again to this student and to his family. That's so great. There's something wrong with my piano. And so we all had a chuckle about that. Okay, I have another shout out. Again, I'm taking my time, so you haven't heard me break up my segments yet with any music because I'm still going here on CMajor Before the Show. And I will just pause here for a moment to invite you to keep listening to CMajor Before the Show across the summer, and to let you know that I'm going to be taking a break from the CMajor radio show. So after today's episode, I'm going to be taking a summer break. So if you've been joining me over there on Blog Talk Radio, just know that I will announce this a little bit later this morning on the CMajor radio show that I'm going to be taking a break because I want to give myself time to breathe a little bit. It's been great broadcasting here on Spreaker and BTR. It's been really super great. I've enjoyed it. I've had to pull back, like I said, on my social media because it gets a little overwhelming at times. You just don't know what you're going to get when you're on social media. So I will be back on Twitter in the future. So if you've been following me there, keep listening, because I will announce my return to Twitter when I'm ready to return to Twitter. So it won't hopefully be that long because I really enjoy being on Twitter. Twitter is a great platform, and I really enjoy being on Twitter. I enjoy all social media. I think social media is great for making friends across the world and really connecting with followers that have the same interests that you have. So just stick with me. I encourage you to stick with me. Now, a little bit later over at the CMajor radio show, in about an hour and 30 minutes, I'm going to be talking about playing classical melodies by color, simplifying the familiar. So I'll say a little bit more about that. I'll give you the show description before I end today's podcast over here. But let me go back now to my student shoutouts. And so I have students now that are deciding how they're going to go into the fall season with their music making. So I'm excited about that because it's the time where you either drop out or you really go for it. And these students seem to be really going for it. So a big shout out to my students that are increasing their lesson time and their focus for the fall. So big shout out to them. I think that's great. You don't have to do more than 30 minutes for a piano lesson. When I was coming along, it was 45 minutes for a piano lesson, but I think, again, with so many distractions that we have here in the 21st century with mobile devices and everything else that grabs your attention, gaming and so forth, that a lot of young students especially just don't want to spend anything beyond 30 minutes to focus on something like piano, but I'm finding that my students really want to do it. So I hope it doesn't sound like I'm bragging or anything like that. That's not the point. I'm really just trying to say that it's interesting that you have young students that are willing to spend 45 minutes and beyond at the piano. And when they make the request themselves to their parents, I mean, that's a great thing. And then the parents come to me and say, is it possible for us to increase the lesson time? So for me, the success has been to just divide the time equally. So spending 15 minutes on one concept, one idea, and then shifting to another idea for the next 15 minutes, and then coming back to the first idea for the next 15 minutes if you're doing a 45-minute lesson. So I think of it as the way you would compose a piece, ABA form for piano lessons, basically. So shout out again to my students that are increasing their lesson time. And now I have another shout out that I want to give to my students who like student rewards. And it's a special shout out for me because these are the students who love sticker rewards. So shout out to you. Not everybody loves stickers. So good for you. And I don't use stickers in a way that makes my students feel upset about their lessons, that they didn't earn a sticker. It's simply, if you finish the lesson, there's a sticker waiting for you if you would like to have a sticker. Some students aren't into stickers, and then others will say they would like a particular sticker. I'll look for that. If I can find it, then I'll offer it. If I don't, then I'll use what I have. But I do have some students that are on fire for the musical themed stickers. For the music themed stickers. They really are on fire for those. And I won't say they fight over it, but if I haven't reloaded my stickers and they're waiting for a certain sticker to come in stock again, then they really look forward to that. So I just have to laugh about that. I think it's funny because I have a couple of students that were waiting for one particular sticker to come back around again because someone else got it before them, and then I had to restock. So sticker rewards, just a small thing, but sometimes it's just that small thing that really gets them excited about their piano lessons and to know that at the end of the lesson they have something waiting for them. So shout out again to those students. And I want to finally give a shout out to my new piano students again and just say a little bit more about what they're going to be working on. I have new piano students that are working on understanding their own self-directed lessons. So let me clarify that and what I mean by that. You know how sometimes you have, I don't say a particular age group of students, but you have a certain kind of student, I think that's what I'm trying to say, that will just learn on their own. No matter what you say, no matter what you do, they just have their own way of learning, and they don't mind just jumping in and just learning. And maybe a way to label that, you may call it kinesthetic learning. There may be a way to label it, but it's a little bit different than just saying they learn by just doing. They also learn because they have a set idea of how they should be learning. So, self-directed, you could just say that too, but it's a combination of things that I'm saying. So here it is. I have a student that had been learning to play the piano by using everything she could get her hands on. Mobile devices, books, watching YouTube, you name it. Everything that she could do to help herself learn to play. And when I met her for the first time, I just listened to some of the things she was able to put together, and she's doing a great job. But now we're able to take it a step further. So a big shout out to her, because I think we're starting to map out a plan that's going to work best for her learning, best for the way that she learns, and at the same time to put her on the path to music literacy. So shout out to her. And shout out to her parents that are super supportive, and we're all in this together. We're learning together about how to keep her on the right path to her music making, and then just seeing how it flows, just really following the flow of her learning. So I'm really happy to be a part of that. And I would like to give a shout out to my music theory students. Now, I did do this a little bit last week. I sent out a tweet, and maybe the tweet was premature, but I congratulated my music theory students for their high scores on their music exams, and only to find out that some applicants had not received scores for their candidates who took the music exams. But either way, the tweet went out because I was really, really proud of my students that had done so well and scored so high on their music theory exams, and it really is all of them. It has very little to do with me, and it's really all about their desire, their will to study, and they've done super great, and I'm really proud of them. So shout out to those students. Also shout out to my new music theory students who are being very brave. They're coming to me saying that they have trouble with music theory and practicing music theory, and they need some help. So we're going to be talking about topics that will put them on the right path. So I'm going to share with you a little bit of those topics that they're going to be delving into. But shout out to my music theory students. So I did see also on social media there was some discussion floating around about whether or not music theory is still relevant. My answer to that, and they weren't just asking me, I think it was just really a rhetorical question, or a question that's just floating out there. Is music theory still needed today? My answer to that, ask Juilliard, because I think Juilliard sets a standard for what should be learned in this day and age when it comes to music making. And why wouldn't you want to learn music theory? That's my question. Music theory in the sense of learning how to write counterpoint and some of those Baroque ideas that are out there, still out there, I should say, when it comes to music theory courses. Some people would say, oh, that's outdated. Why would I want to learn that? But I would encourage anyone that writes music, that even listens to music, that to be able to sit down and analyze what you've just heard, or when you're writing your own music, to be able to sit down and break it down to say, this is what I did and this is how I can discuss what I did. I really think it's as simple as that. I don't think it's something that should be forced. Now, speaking of which, if you are taking a formal music exam, you will need to know something about time signatures. At a certain level in music exams, you'll need to know about alto clef, double sharps, and double flats, double whole notes, double dots, duplets. You will need to know about keys with 5 sharps or flats, technical names of notes, and diatonic scales. So I think this is what scares a lot of people. They just go, whoa, I don't want to know that. I don't want to know all of that. It's just too much. Stop. But I think you owe it to yourself to know as much as you can know. What's wrong with that? I don't understand the objection. I really don't. But shout out to my students that are starting on that journey of taking their learning a little bit higher when it comes to music theory. So, keys with 5 sharps or flats, technical names of notes and diatonic scales, 4-bar rhythms, learning about triads and chords on 1, 4, and 5, intervals, writing a rhythm to words, that's always fun, the chromatic scale, ornaments, and then there's more that can be added, but ornaments are fun too. So speaking of the Baroque period, it's a chance for you to really show off your knowledge about mordents and trills, and do you understand the difference between an appoggiatura versus an accacciatura and things of that nature. That's always fun. That's fun for me. Maybe that's just me. But I think it's fun, and I think it's fun for my students once they realize it's not as scary as you think. And there's nothing wrong with it. You never know if you decide to go on to become a doctor, a lawyer, a scientist, whatever you may be in life, and you just decide to study music at this level, and you're at a cocktail party and you need to talk about music with someone just to relate to that person, and the subject of ornaments comes up, or intervals, or the chromatic scale. Somebody says, oh, when I took piano lessons I had to learn about the chromatic scale. And then you can speak up and say, oh yes, the hardest thing about the chromatic scale was, or the most fun thing about the chromatic scale. You can chime into the conversation. Of course, I'm being a little funny here, so let me put in the laughter track. I always crack up with my students and I say to her, don't you want to be able to discuss 4-bar rhythms with your friends, with a social conversation where it comes up that you need to be able to talk about triads and chords, and did you hear that one chord? So she always laughs when I say that. But so shout out again to my music theory students, and keep doing what you're doing. So shout out to them. So I just encourage you to keep doing your homework. Yeah, so that's the homework sound when I have homework that I'm assigning. But of course it's summer, so I'm not assigning any homework over the summer. See me over at cmajorsclassroom.wordpress.com, because over there a little bit later I'm going to post something new, and unfortunately I won't be able to tweet that out because I'm not on Twitter as of this week. I decided to relax my Twitter account. I love Twitter, though. Shout out to Twitter. Big shout out. Sending lots of love to Twitter. And not that I don't love Facebook, just sending lots of love to Twitter this morning, because I know it's going to be a shock for some of my followers that have been following me and now I'm not there. But I love tweeting this week because I did a lot of tweeting about Wimbledon. If anybody watched Wimbledon this week, I did a lot of tweeting about that. And I was also very excited about the John Deere Classic, following what was going on with golf. And of course, everybody was tweeting about the World Cup. But I'll see you again on Twitter. I just need some time to pull back and relax over the summer, and I'll be back. I'll be back on Twitter. Now, if you're going to be joining me a little bit later over at the CMajor Radio Show in about an hour and 15 minutes, I'm going to be talking about playing classical melodies by color, simplifying the familiar. So let me go ahead and give you a description of today's show. So, play in minutes, not years. If you can hum, whistle, or sing, you can play by color. No worries. Adults, children, and senior citizens can be inspired to play piano, and it won't take you years to do it. Learn to play a melody in minutes. Play piano by color. It's an interesting idea whose time has resurfaced. So tune in for the next CMajor Radio Show, and what I'm going to do today, I'm going to walk you through color organizing a classical melody to navigate your way around the piano. Now, let me just say this. If you're listening to CMajor Before the Show, one reason to listen in is because I may give you instructions prior to the show, and also I may just tell you ahead of time what I'm planning to do. So last week I did some playing on the show. I demonstrated an original melody. But for the classical melodies, I'm not going to demonstrate those today. What I'm going to do is just walk you through the way that the color is organized so that you can sit down and play that melody. So if you did prep your keyboard and it's still prepped, then you'll want to follow the same color idea that we used last week to navigate your way around the piano. But I think you'll be surprised at some of the melodies that you can learn to play by color using classical music. So the episode for today over at the CMajor Radio Show is going to be more for the recreational-minded student. So if you're serious-minded, you may not enjoy the show. You may just really go, I can't listen to this, because you're more of a serious-minded person, and you're not just playing music for fun. You're playing it because you're a professional, and this is what you do. But if you are interested in classical music at all, and you wanted to know a little bit more about some of the composers that you can listen to just to pique your interest, I will give you some names of composers. I've listed some already in the description, but we'll talk a little bit more about that. So it should be fun. So join in the fun. Join the fun, the love for classical music, and the happiness that I feel just talking about some of these classical pieces. So you may want to say, or you may think to yourself, well, why is it always classical C major? Because I'm classically trained. That's what I do. That's what I teach. But what about jazz? Jazz is not one of my strong suits. There are so many pianists out there that could run circles around me when it comes to jazz piano playing. I know who they are. They let me know who they are. And shout out to them. Shout out to all the jazz pianists out there. It's not an easy thing. I mean, jazz, to some of my friends, my jazz piano friends, that's the only truthful piano playing that exists in their mind. So I have to give it to them. Either you can swing or you can't, right? So good for you. And I applaud all my friends that are in Swing University. But I do have some students that are learning to play jazz. They play other instruments, and then they come to me for some ideas. So there's a book that I'm able to use that's out of print but it also has some very strong concepts about the different styles of jazz playing. So, but I'll leave that for another discussion. So, shout out to all of my friends and my students as well who are on the path to playing jazz piano, and I've met one of the greatest jazz pianists ever, if he still labels himself as that, but it was just so inspiring to see him play in person at the Blue Note. I think it was a couple of years ago. So if you want to know that story, see me offline. I'll tell you about that experience, but it was really inspiring. But anyway, join me over at the CMajor Radio Show a little bit later on this morning, and I hope to see you over there. Hope to see you very soon, in about an hour, a little bit over an hour. So now, coming back to CMajor Before the Show, I just want to end today's broadcast by talking about what's coming up on the next couple episodes of CMajor Before the Show. So give me just a moment. I'm going to take a break, get myself together here, and then I'm going to come back and tell you what you can look forward to in some upcoming episodes. I'll see you in a moment. Thank you so much for listening this morning. You're listening to CMajor Before the Show, and I just want to tell you a little bit about what I will be talking about on a couple of upcoming episodes here on CMajor Before the Show. And it's just because I'm taking a little midsummer break over at the CMajor Radio Show, but don't worry, I'll be back on that show in no time. I just want to focus more on CMajor Before the Show because I have an opportunity to talk to you about what's going on with some of the methods that I'm using in my studio. So it really comes down to rote versus note learning. And so I want to spend a little bit more time just helping you along with that. And then just from a more research perspective, coming back into the CMajor Radio Show with a more serious focus about how you can help your own music making, depending on the path that you're on. So you may be on the path to music literacy, or you may be on the path to something else. But what I will be doing over here at CMajor Before the Show is addressing the idea of learning to play the piano by notes versus learning to play the piano by rote. So that'll be coming up on CMajor Before the Show. Thank you so much for joining me today. It's been a great pleasure to be with you, and I look forward to being with you next time here on CMajor Before the Show. It's still summer, and it's still great weather out there, so if you're in New York, if you happen to be able to make it to the shore, just know that you really should try to take advantage of this great weather while we have it. So have a great day. Have a great rest of your week. And I'll see you again soon right here on CMajor Before the Show. Take care.